All right, everybody. I want to welcome you to another Thursday Conversations with Commodores. We're a little early this week, but thanks to Coach, who's my guest this evening, was able to work out our schedule where we're now live. I want to welcome Coach Randy Ross, one of my coaches back in the day, to our show tonight. Hey, Coach, good to see you.
Hey, Bernard, good to see you, man. I tell you, it's been a while, but time flies. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm great. I'm glad you got me on.
Well, time does fly, and I'm so glad that we've connected a little bit in the last day or so and had a good little chat before we went on live. But sometimes you may not see somebody for long periods of time, but you have a connection and you just pick back up, and it's as if it was last week or last month. But I'm so glad to see you and talk to Mrs. Ross for just a minute ago, and it just brings me back to a good time and place for me.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I tell you, Ann loved Vanderbilt, and we had a great experience there. And we've been Vandy fans ever since we were there, and we always pull for Vandy. And except when we play them, you got to pull for who's paying you. But at the same time, we loved our experience at Vanderbilt University.
And we're going to get to that time period in a few minutes, but you've got a great history before Vanderbilt and subsequent to Vanderbilt. But Coach, before we do, Dwayne Jones says to tell you hello.
Well, good. You tell Dwayne hello.
I certainly will. He usually chimes in. Thank you, Dwayne, for making our 5 o'clock call today. Usually we're at 7 o'clock, but thanks to Coach having some time. Like I said, we're now live now. But Coach, I know you got your start in the coaching ranks in high school in the state of Alabama. But before we even get there, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boaz, Alabama, a little small town up in North Alabama and up above Birmingham, south of Huntsville. And so that's where all my roots are.
Not too far from what used to be the sock capital of the world. And I think, was Boaz maybe the outlets capital or what? I'm not sure remember what they called themselves.
Well, you're right. That's a good memory. You know, they started, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but they had the first factory outlets of any place in the whole country. And a guy there in Boaz came up with that idea from, they made lead jeans there, had a big factory. And they moved the factory to another location. So he decided to turn that thing into an outlet mall. And then other stores started coming in before long. They had quite a few outlet stores there, and they sort of caught on from there nationwide.
Well, it's for folks who don't know that part of the state of Alabama. It's kind of the northeast quadrant. You go from Gadsden all the way up to Jackson County and Huntsville area. But what I love about that part of the state, not just Boaz, but when you get into Gunnersville and Scottsboro, where all the luggage, you're right, Dwayne, it's not too far from Boaz, but the little Grand Canyon is up there in DeKalb County. And that is just, if anybody does hiking or loves the outdoors and nature, it is such a great place. And we won't go too far into this because I'm passionate about hiking in all parts of our state. But I love going up there to Mentone. There's great places to eat and hike, et cetera. But that's a beautiful part of the state where you're from, Coach.
Yeah, it is. Fort Payne area where you're talking about, and Little River Canyon and all that area, Mentone, all that. That's a really pretty part of the state for people who's never gotten up there. And that's one of the great things about the state of Alabama is you got the mountains in the north part and you got the beaches in the south part. So you get a little of both.
You sure do. Now, growing up, Coach, in the Boaz area, did you play sports?
I did, man. I was one of those kids that when I was about 4 years old, I knew I wanted to coach football because I love sports. And so, I couldn't wait till I was old enough. So I played minor league baseball on up. I played peewee football, played peewee basketball. We used to have that back then. And so I played actually in high school. I did 4 sports. I did track and along with baseball, football, and basketball. And I just love playing any game, whatever the season was, I wanted to play it.
So what you're saying is there was no sitting around the Ross household when you were a kid. You had to be outdoors.
That's it, man. It's a shame kids can't do that today, but I was never indoors. Ann and I talk about that all the time. When we grew up, you were outside all day long. And so that's sort of the nature of why I just love any sport. So you're exactly right. I was outdoors all the time.
And when did you first break into any coaching ranks?
Well, you know what? I actually, when I was in college, I started coaching a little league baseball team. And I got my first taste of what that was all about, mainly parents more than it was the kids. But, I love doing that. I love teaching, kids skills, and loved trying to help them mold into being athletes. And I enjoyed that year. And I knew I wanted to coach when I was a young kid all the way up. And so I had a desire to do it, never even dreamed of doing anything else. And so, we had a great career, did it for 45 years, and wouldn't go back and change any of it.
Well, we're certainly going to get to some of those highlights, lowlights, and everything in between. But before we get to the college ranks, you had a very successful tenure in the Alabama high school ranks. I want you to share a little bit about that, because you had some wonderful athletes to play for you during those times.
Well, I did, and any coach will tell you they're as good as the players. There's no secret to that. Good coaches usually have good players, and so right out of college, I got hired at a high school there in Gaston High School, and they made me the head baseball coach because I'd played college baseball. And I tell everybody this story. The first year we won the state championship. And I thought, man, this is pretty easy. We're going to win a bunch of these. Well, I never won another one. I promise you that. They're harder than I ever realized. But, we started out, and that's where I met Ann. We got married at the end of that school year. And I tell everybody we dated about 9 years and 9 months. I mean, we were together every day, been together ever since. But that's where we met, was at our first job. And I was an assistant football coach there, in head baseball, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade basketball. I used to practice all afternoon with those guys. And so then I was only there 1 year, moved over to Southside High School in Gadsden, and I was a head baseball coach there, and I was the assistant football coach for 2 years. And the head coach left about 2 weeks before the season started. And the community and all the kids on the team got together and went to the superintendent board of education, wanted me to be the head coach. Well, I certainly wasn't old enough to be it. I promise you. No.
How old were you at this point?
You know what? I was 24, fixing to turn 25.
You were the older brother for a lot of these guys.
I was. And, I remember, I'll never forget, our superintendent was a man named E.C. Baldy Wilson, coached all his life. And he called me in his office. He said, this is going to be the dumbest thing I've ever done. But he said, I'm going to let them have you. They want you. I'm going to let them have you. He said, you're not ready to be a head coach, but he said, I'm going to help you. And he said, I'm going to let you be the head coach. And so we started out there at Southside, and I was the head coach there for 7 years. And like you said, had many, many outstanding players, and had great success there at Southside. And it wasn't anything I did. It was all about the players.
Well, Coach, as long as I've known you, I know you to be a humble man, but you get the credit for the wins. You also get the responsibility for the losses, and there were way more wins than losses during that time period at Southside. I know that.
Well, there, we were fortunate. Again, had good players, and was in a good area there with Gadsden and all those schools. And it was tough region it was in, but kids played and wanted to win, and that's a big part of it. And we had a lot of success there, and loved those kids. And Ann and I got to go back in October. All the kids there at Southside that played for me had a reunion. And we had a bunch of them that showed up, and they're all like you. They're a little bit older now. And but anyway, we had a great time there. It was one of the football home games, and we had a reunion on Thursday night, and then had a reception on Friday. And it was a lot of fun. So those memories are great. And always, we treasure every minute of those.
And Coach, what years were you at Southside?
I was there from 78 to 85.
There was some great high school football being played in Alabama during those years. That's for sure. Yeah. Coach, we got one of the Keystone Cops, beloved Billy Smith, says to tell you hello.
You tell Billy hello, man. I tell you, it's great to hear about these guys.
And there's a gentleman who I think Linda must have let him out of the kitchen. He's not washing dishes right now. Coach Gary Shepard has joined us and says to tell you hello.
Well, I tell you what, you know what? Sheppy was one of the great guys, man. I tell you, I love him, and he took care of me. He kind of had gone through a little of the high school ranks. It was my first time into college football, and I didn't come here from Sikkim, and I was running around that place like a chicken with my head cut off. And Sheffy kind of coached me around and took good care of me, and we've been great friends ever since, and touch base with each other off and on when we can. And I love Gary Shepard.
Well, you know what he's about to say. When are you gonna come have a steak with me? So
I know I'm gonna go try it. I'm gonna go test him. I'm gonna see what I know what kind of coach he was. He was great. He was an outstanding coach. I'm gonna see what kind of cook he is.
Oh, no. We're gonna move on from this. Coach Shep he is the MC. He'll greet you at the door. He'll clean the dishes after you leave, but everything in between they leave to the professionals. Am I right, Coach? But
hey, you know what? That's a smart move on Linda's part.
That's right. That's right. Well, Coach, you are at Southside up until 80. What'd you say? 84.
80. Yeah, my last season there was 84. And then we moved on to Scottsboro High School up in North Alabama. You mentioned Jackson County a while ago. We lived there for a couple of years, and that was the season of 85, 86. And then 87's a year I came, Coach Brown gave me a chance to come into college football. And, you know, I'll always be appreciative of him and the opportunity that he gave me to break into college, and hired me as a volunteer coach back then.
Coach, and that's when our worlds collide. I came in the fall of 86 out of Dothan, and we had never met before. Coach Bradley, Mark Bradley, who was on the show a while back with his son. Coach Bradley was the recruiter for the state of Alabama, at least I think the whole state, but he was the coach who signed me. And I remember that's when you and I first met, was in the fall of 86. But how did you get from Scottsboro up to Nashville? What was the path? How did you find your way that way?
Well, that I wished I had a couple hours to tell you all of it, but really it was really just a blessing. God allowed me to get into college football, and Watson was at Jacksonville State University, which was right there close to Southside. So I used to go over there and wear those guys out 20 miles away, and I'd go in and actually sat in on some of the staff meetings there and got to know those guys, and wanted to be in college, wanted to learn from them, to be honest with you, at the time, to make, to try to become a better high school football coach, and loved Coach Brown's offense and loved all the things he was doing, and wanted to pattern a lot of the things. And so the connection we had there, and then I just started getting in touch with him, and God opened the door for us to go to Vanderbilt and through Watson, and it was it just kind of it was a great experience to get to do that. But I'm very appreciative for the fact that he gave me that opportunity, and always be indebted to him.
Now, before you came up to Nashville, other than Watson, did you know any of the other coaches on the staff?
Well, actually, I did. I knew Coach Christophel. I knew Rick. I knew Gary Shepard before we went to Vanderbilt. Those guys had coached with Watson, and Greg Mantooth. That was the other one. And so those guys had coached with Watson at Austin Peay. And it was a tragic way that I got to know him. I had a young man that played for me at Southside High School there in Gadsden. Was a great wide receiver. He had signed with Austin Peay. And after his freshman year, he was shot and killed, and by some guys running from the law. They stole his car and they shot him and killed him. And so that was it was really a tragic deal for the reason that I ended up knowing those guys. But I had known them through Rodney being recruited by it, and so we'd had a relationship actually before we got to Vanderbilt. And I knew Miss Beverly really well because she was there at Austin Peay. So during all that time, Rodney, the young man that got killed, was playing there. So I had connections with her and several of those guys.
I've always heard that high school coaches who have recruits, they end up striking relationships, friendships, if you will, professionally and maybe ultimately socially with the colleges that are recruiting the players who are coming up through those high school ranks. So that's pretty cool that you were able to meet those coaches prior to that, maybe laid a little bit of groundwork. You weren't brand new, unknown to Watson and some of those guys. But share with us a little bit about the transition coming out of high school, and now you're coaching guys who are a little bit older, even a little bit, the 18 to 22-year-old age range, where in the past you've been anywhere from like 13 to 18 in the past. What's the big difference, or what were you learning at that point, that transition to college?
Well, you know what? It's kind of funny you ask that. I was talking to a guy about this not long ago, and to be honest with you, when I got to Vanderbilt, I thought I knew something about football, and I'll be honest, it was a total change. You know, the schemes, the hours and hours you spend breaking down film, and how technical you were with each position more so. A lot of times in high school, you don't have but 4 or 5 guys coaching a team, and you got to do the best you can to get the kids on the field. So the biggest transition to me was just learning all the different schemes and things that you do in college. And really, be honest with you, the difference to me a little bit from the high school kids and the college kids is high school kids will do anything you ask them to do. Don't matter if it's right or wrong or indifferent. But in college, the kids understand the game so much better at that stage. Mm-hmm. They want you to help. So you need to know what you're telling them. So, because when they come off the field and they want help to, you know, they're wanting you to tell them, what did you see? What was free safety doing? What's strong? What's the corner doing? What's this guy doing? And so that was a really big difference. As I realized in a hurry that y'all were seeking help to be a better player in a different way than a high school kid was. Mm-hmm. And so you needed to know what you were telling them. You needed to know that you were telling them, you know, things that were accurate too, because you're going to go back and look at it on tape the next week.
Yeah. Well, Coach, what were your initial responsibilities when you came on to the Commodores?
Well, you know, when Coach Brown first hired me, when I came up there, I ended up working that first season with the strong safeties. And that was a good experience for me because I was always an offensive guy. Didn't spend too much time on defense, and I really needed that. Mm-hmm. And so Dick Hopkins was our defensive coordinator, and Dick coached corners, and he let me take the strong safeties. And so I learned more that year about football, probably from a standpoint of things that I hadn't done in the past. And it was mainly to start understanding. I knew what defenses did. I knew what the alignments, but I didn't understand the total schemes of things they were trying to accomplish. So that was a huge help to me. And then I ended up getting an opportunity to coach quarterbacks that year, and I really enjoyed that. And so that was a great experience. And I worked with Coach Mantooth the second year with the defensive lineman. Mm-hmm. And learned I had no clue about defensive linemen. So that was a good teaching experience for me. And so all 3 years, I got to do something different, which really helped me understand the game a whole lot better.
I'm going to test your memory on one thing. I told you I wasn't going to put you on the spot, but maybe you'll remember this. I remember bits and pieces, but the main thing I do remember was Coach Mantooth. There was a time, I think this would have been in fall camp, as we're getting closer and closer to the games, or the opening game. There would be a time at the end of a practice for coaches to tell a joke. And I don't know if you remember this, and I'm not going to repeat it here because it's not family friendly, but Coach Mantooth told one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard. And it wasn't original to him, but the way he presented it, and that Southern syrupy drawl that he has just was a perfect delivery of the line. And the whole team just fell out. Do you happen to remember that event when he told that joke?
I think I do. I think it was in a saloon, wasn't it? Was it the one about the saloon? Yeah.
Good memory. It sure was.
Well, and be honest with you, we can't, like you said, we probably don't need to do it on here, but I cleaned that up a little bit, and I used that for years and years. I took some of the bad out and made it clean, but that was great. It was exactly, I know exactly when you said what it was.
Well, just the way he delivered it was just perfect. And I just remember we just all fell out because it just broke the tension of practice. It broke the tension and the monotony of fall camp and things. But, you know, well, college football, whether you're coaching it or playing it, is a serious thing. It's a very complicated and intensive thing, but you can find some humor. You can find some levity every once in a while. And I appreciated that whenever we'd have those moments. But I do want to test you again, a little bit of your memory about What about being on the sidelines on game days that you remembered from that first year or two? You coming from the college, I mean, high school ranks, there could be 500 to 5,000 in the stands, depending on who you're playing. But now we're going into stadiums of 70, 80, 90,000 on SEC weekends. And you had responsibilities, we all did, even if those weren't on the field, we on the sidelines. What do you recall about those big stadium nights and days, those games early on?
Well, I remember vividly when I walked out for our first game. This was during warm-ups, and I look around and I go, wow, this is incredible. And, because you're down on the field, you've always wanted to coach in college. That was a huge desire. And basically, I kept telling myself, whatever you do, don't hyperventilate. I began to breathe so hard. I was so excited. I was like, God, I'm fixing to hyperventilate. Don't do that.
Wow.
I was nervous enough. And I remember, man, it was just so, it was amazing. And you know what? I went into those stadiums. I think we added up one time during the 33 years of college football. You went in stadiums and those kind of settings, counting bowl games and everything. I think it was close to 400 and something times. And
wow.
I felt that. I never lost that feeling when I walked in a stadium. And as I got older, I tried to soak it all in. And you'd walk out in those stadiums with fans, thousands and thousands of people. And it was a great experience for me from the first game to the very end.
Coach, was your first game at Vanderbilt, was that the fall of 86?
No, it was actually fall of 87.
Of 87.
We opened with Memphis.
That's what I wanted to find. I wanted to jog I think we may be able to hit on a couple of things here. The first game, you're right. It was Memphis. We were at home.
And won.
It was a win, a 27-17 win. And what were your responsibilities on the sidelines for those games?
Well, you know what? I was watching, basically, I was watching the far side of the field, and Dick had me watching a couple things on defense and relaying it back to him, and trying to watch certain routes and watch numbers. And so, I just remember so fast. I'm like, I'm trying to write it down. We're already in the next play,
Right.
And so it took a little while. But the biggest thing was just helping watch what was going on offensively on the far side of the field away from us, and reporting it back to him and certain receivers and any tendencies we could get on things that they were doing, any signals we could get. And so it was going fast, man. And so I was trying my best to do the best I could. And I'm infatuated with all the crowds, and I'm watching things, and I'm like, man, I got to get out. And that's experience. You learn to block all that out eventually. And
I think, Coach, we all were that way from time to time. But what I want to talk about in today's time with social media, it's very easy to learn who the assistant coaches are on a given staff. And it doesn't matter if it's SEC or Division II, all that's readily available. But back in the 80s and 90s, pre-internet, you weren't as well known. And you're really a lot more anonymous compared to the head coach, or maybe even the assistant head coach or one of the coordinators. But here's what I want to ask you. I want you to take us a little bit behind the scenes as an assistant coach in an SEC program, whether it was at Bama, Arkansas, wherever you were, because not many people know the countless hours that you're putting in every single week, particularly game week, because you've got 11 or 12 or now 13, depending on the season, different schemes you've got to put in each week. You got to learn the personnel. You got to break down the film. Did you ever spend the night at the football complex? Are you ever getting there at 4 a.m, that kind of thing?
Well, you did. And that was sort of a different thing for me too. And I actually did end up, I think, staying at Vanderbilt a couple of nights. And the thing about it is the difference from high school to college too was the breakdowns. We thoroughly broke everything down from A to Z, and it took hours and hours to do it. And there was a lot of nights you left at 12:30, 1 a.m., whatever, and then you're back up there at 6:30 or 7 o'clock the next morning. And so the hours, people don't realize the hours that a lot of coaches spend at that office. Now, the whole landscape of this thing's changed. Back then, we all did that. We had GAs that did it, obviously. But you had the whole 16 millimeters, and you'd splice all those film and tape them all across the walls and do all that. And now you got all the computer stuff. You don't have to do that. Plus, everybody's got tons of analysts and quality control people, and they're all doing that now. There's about 40 people doing what about 12 or 15 of us used to do.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Coach. Back then, we had in the 80s, we had the 16 millimeter film. I remember John Gromos and Tim Richardson teaching me, all right, now it's your job. You're the freshman. And I knew I'd screw it up, or I knew it would break. And those times, Christophel, when that would happen, just, all right, you did it again, that breaking you in a little bit. But I was always so nervous the film was going to break when it was rolling through those spindles. Joe Peoples says to tell you hello, Coach.
Oh, good. Tell Joe hello.
Thank you, Joe, for coming in here with us. We got Coach Randy Ross. We're in the mid 80s. We're in the 87, 88, 89 time period at Vanderbilt. But what gave you the most satisfaction, the most good feelings about coaching? And it doesn't have to be on the high school or college, whatever your experiences were. I know the wins are awesome, the losses stink, but a lot of people share that it's off the field that they appreciate even more. So share a little bit about that, Coach.
Well, and I think that's a great question. The thing that I probably enjoyed the most was relationships. And just like you said a minute ago, we pick right back up. It's as if we've been talking for the past 30 years. And so I enjoyed the on the field stuff. I enjoyed coaching. I enjoyed watching young men compete. But probably the biggest thing, even to this day, is a relationship that you have with the former players and the coaches. And, there's probably not hardly a week or so that goes by that I don't talk with a former player, text with a former player, former coach. And I talked to 2 coaches called me today that I work with at Arkansas, checking to see how I was enjoying this retirement. But awesome. So I think it's all about the relationship. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's lost what it used to be. It's nothing like when you were there. It's become such a business now and everything. But I think we were in a great time. I think it was a great era for college football. And the relationship you and I have and people that you played and other coaches, I don't think that's quite the same today as it was. But for me personally, it was about the relationship with all the people I work with and all the players that I work with through the years.
Very good. Well, Coach, I want to ask you back. Let's drop back to Southside those years. Did you ever head a little further west and play Decatur High School or any of the Morgan County schools?
Well, you know what? We ended up playing in the state semifinals one year. We played Hartselle. They were from that county, but we didn't ever play. We were in a different district. We never met with the Austins or the Decaturs or any of those, but I did play Hartselle at that time. They were a great high school football program. But most of our competition was around the Etowah County, DeKalb County, Marshall County, those, Sylacaugas and
really more the eastern side of the state. The reason why I bring it up, and your paths wouldn't have crossed because Kenny Cole, who's now in Huntsville, was a Decatur product. He's here with us live. He was a couple of years. I think he was at Vanderbilt by the time you got to Southside, but I was just curious if your schools may have ever played against each other. But Kenny is an attorney, a very successful trial lawyer in Huntsville, and I'm so glad he's with us for a few minutes tonight with Coach Randy Ross. Coach, let's talk about a little bit more about the Vanderbilt time period. We had some real, I can call them characters now, statute of limitations is up, but we had John Norwig was our head trainer, and John was on the program recently. We had Coach Brad Bates also on the program recently, was our strength and conditioning coach. And the personalities that they brought to the equation, plus all the assistant coaches, you had some real animated folks that you got to spend a lot of time with. Now I want you to take us off the field, maybe some downtime, maybe y'all all went out to dinner. You don't have to share stories. I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I want you to kind of jog your memory a little bit about something you recall from those time periods when the infrequent times that you were away from football.
Well, that's a good question. You mentioned Brad Bates, our strength coach. You know, he was always serious around the office and all that. But once you got him away from the office and all, he had a great sense of humor. Is really dry, and John Norway same way. I mean, it was, you know, so you really, once you got away from the office, a lot of times you saw people's personalities completely change, and you know, everybody's human beings. I think around the office, they tend to, they don't have the time to really, you don't see who they really are. And so we had some great times together. I know you know, Gary Shepard being on here and all, we talking about him. He and I used to run out and play golf early in the morning. And you know, you get out there and you just get to see a different side of people. And that was what made the thing so fun. But Sheppy Dog and I used to play a lot of golf. And
this won't surprise you, Coach. He was on the golf course this afternoon. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that.
No, I know. I know he probably plays golf every day. I don't blame him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Coach, let's talk a little bit about recruiting. The years you were at Vanderbilt, were you given any recruiting responsibilities?
You know, I was very fortunate because I was trying to break into the college ranks. And as I said, when I came there, I wasn't allowed to go on the road recruiting. And we ended up in a situation with a coaching shortage. So the first year I ended up getting to go on the road recruited the whole year and ended up signing a couple of guys. And that was great experience for me because it actually ended up, you know, helping down the road when you were applying. Mm-hmm. And then also we had a coach that year, our linebacker coach got hurt and he didn't get to go on the road. So I got to take his place. So I ended up recruiting from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so I'll tell you this little story. It's interesting. Beverly Brothers and June Jakes took care of me, man. They took a little old country boy from Boaz, Alabama that had never even been out of the state.
Country comes to town.
Oh, man. So my first recruiting trip, and Ann is listening, she'll remember this. I go to Newark, New Jersey. Now, I ain't never even flown hardly before. So I fly to Newark, New Jersey. I get there. I go up to rent my car. Guess what I forgot? I didn't even have a driver's license or a credit card. You know, credit cards back then, people didn't use much. And we went every week before we go recruiting, we go to the business office, check out a couple of $1,000 and you paid cash for everything. Now they wouldn't do that for anything. So I'm sitting there. I don't have a clue what I'm going to do. We don't even have cell phones. So I am just completely stranded in Newark, New Jersey. And I've got home visits and school visits. And so I finally go to a payphone, which most people don't even know what a payphone is this day and time. And I call in. She gives me the driver's license number of my driver's license. I go to the counter of Hertz rental car. And I'm explaining and pleading with this guy. And he says, sir, there's nothing I can do. I can't rent you a car. Lo and behold, I sit there with this guy. He rented me a car with just me giving him my driver's license. I gave him $25 in cash to do it. He rented me a car with no credit card, no driver's license. And people today go, man, this would never happen. But you know what? At the very end, I said, man, I hope you don't get in trouble. He looked at me and he said, sir, I'm quitting tonight when 11 o'clock gets here. This is my last shift. So I don't care if you ever turn that car in or not. So the only reason I got that car was that he was quitting that night. And that was my experience. I was so backwards in country. I didn't even know that you had to have a credit card. And I went off and forgot my driver's license. And so, but he rented the car and I was in New Jersey. I was recruiting North New Jersey. I had a flight scheduled the next day to fly to Tom's Rivers down south. And I wasn't going to turn that car back in. I knew I wasn't going to ever get another one. So I ended up driving like 400 miles, canceling my flight. And then I had to drive all the way back to Newark to turn it back in. But that was my first experience of recruiting in college football.
Well, by chance, did you sign whoever you were recruiting up in New Jersey?
Well, we ended up signing a young man named Milton Hubbard. And he was from Newark, New Jersey, but he never came to Vanderbilt. He ended up playing for Army. You know, scholarships, the NLI didn't mean anything for the academies.
Yeah.
So Army kept recruiting him even after we signed him, and they talked him into coming. And so the kid, he was a really good player, good linebacker, but he never made it to Vanderbilt.
Wow.
But
We also had that. We had a kid in my recruiting class who signed with Vanderbilt, never came to campus. I can't remember his name, but he ended up at Navy. So I bet that happens quite a bit.
yeah, it does. It does. It happens more than you would think. Those guys in those academies, they're relentless. They don't even have to, scholarships don't mean anything to them,
Yeah. Yeah.
or signing a letter of intent.
Yeah, it's a different mindset and a different lifestyle. It's a different everything.
Yes,
But,
it is.
guys, I'm talking with Coach Randy Ross. We're living some good times in the 80s. Somehow he got from Nashville to New Jersey with no money, no credit card, no ID, but he still was able to get the job done. Well, Coach, you ended up at Vanderbilt for 3 seasons. We had some ups and downs times, more losses than wins, but I know it was a good experience for everybody because you're learning. You're learning on the job. You're making friends, and that's what it's about. But what led you to ultimately leaving Vanderbilt, going to your next stop?
Well, when Coach Stallings got hired at Alabama, I heard that he basically wanted to put a high school coach on his staff who had, knew all the high school coaches. He wanted a high school coach that the coaches could relate to. And if you remember, Steve Sloan got hired at Vanderbilt for 8 months. And I tell everybody, God sent Steve Sloan to Vanderbilt just for me because he had played for Coach Stallings as a player.
Mhm.
And so I went in and talked to him about it. And we sat down and talked. And Steve said, well, I'm going to call him. And eventually he called him. And we got hooked up. And it's a really long story. I wished I could tell it all. But Coach Stallings, we went down and interviewed with him. And actually, it's the weirdest thing. Coach Stallings, when he interviewed me, he let Ann come in on the interview. I don't know if there's ever in the history of college football that a wife sat in on an interview for the first one. Now, sometimes they may go in the second, third, but the very first one. And so we went in, and Coach ended up hiring me at Alabama, and being a young man from Alabama and a high school coach. And it was a opportunity that I thought was an outstanding opportunity. And we went there and was there for 17 seasons.
And we're going to get to that part. I don't want to leave Nashville just yet, but I want to ask you some of your impressions. Where was maybe some favorite, and I don't know how often you were able to do this just because of your responsibilities. Did you and Mrs. Ross have favorite restaurants or places in town you enjoyed just to get away from the stress of coaching college football?
Well, we did. We ate at that cooker right there. I can't tell you how many times, man. They had the best rolls in town, and we loved the DeMombrin. It was an Italian place or something down. We liked Second Avenue. We used to go down there. Always something going on Saturday, and it was, both of us. It was a new experience living in a larger city like that, and so we took advantage of all the things that were going on and tried to go to things Saturday morning on Second Avenue. We liked it. And at that time, we were just kind of breaking into this deal. We didn't have a lot of money, so we weren't going to very expensive restaurants, I promise you. But I don't know. We had great experience there with a lot of different places and just a lot of events. And it was a great. Nashville was such a good town to live in, and Ann loved it. Every time Vanderbilt's job came open, I worked for June Jones at SMU, Chad Moore. It didn't matter who it was I worked for. Every time Vanderbilt would come open, she'd say, go talk to them about applying at Vanderbilt. Go get them to apply at Vanderbilt. So we loved Nashville. We had a great church there we went to at Belmont. And so we met, met a lot of great friends, still friends with them today. I mean, there's some people there that we communicate with and see them when we go to Nashville. So our favorite spot, probably, though, to answer your question, was if we could ever muster up enough money, was to go eat that buffet breakfast at the Opryland Hotel on Sunday morning. That thing was the length of a football field, man, and you could go. It was outstanding.
It was, and Coach, for folks who didn't visit Nashville back in the 80s, downtown close to the river was nothing like it is today. It's not even comparable how incredibly built up it is now. Downtown back then, there were some shady spots in Nashville's downtown that you really didn't want to get caught in too late at night or in certain parts of the day. But you're right, there were spots. Painter's Alley down there. There were spots. There was a couple of restaurants. You may not remember this short-lived restaurant on the other side of the river It's long since gone. It's not too far from where the stadium is now, called Crawdaddy's. And
I never remember that name.
it used to sit almost on top of the river on the other side. And that was, every once in a while I got to go there. And I just thought that was the neatest place because it had awesome views of the river both directions. But yeah, those some little simpler times, a little different than they are as built up as Nashville is now. Probably one of the fastest growing cities. I think they call it Crane City with as many
Yeah.
construction cranes that are going on. And we've got a few more minutes, Coach. And I sure appreciate you sharing about your Vanderbilt days and your Southside and high school days. But let's move on to the Alabama and Arkansas experiences. You were at Bama for 17 years. You had several coaches. Who were the coaches that you were with during that time period? And what were your responsibilities in Tuscaloosa?
Well, obviously, when Coach Stallings hired me, I worked for him for the seasons he was here, and we won the national championship in '92. That was a great experience. And I was sort of a jack of all trades, even with him, because I worked with the outside linebackers one season. I worked with the running backs, and then I worked with special teams 2 or 3 seasons. And then after Coach Stallings left, that's when I sort of changed directions and started becoming a director of football operations and kind of the right-hand guy for the head coach. And that was a whole different avenue. And so Mike Dubose, I was here for 5 head coaches. I was here with Gene Stallings, Mike Dubose. Then I was here with Dennis Franchione. I was here for that 5 months fiasco with Mike Price. And that one I don't sort of count a lot because he never coached a game. And then with Mike Schulis. So I was with some really, I loved Coach Stallings and some of those guys and talked to them, off and on. But I had a great experience with all the head coaches at Alabama.
You had some real characters as coaches with Mike Price. I know that Coach Dubose had a little success. Just as a side note, he ended up coaching 1 year at my high school down in Dothan at Northview High School. Didn't win a game the whole year, but had a 1 year. He's from Luverne, the Wiregrass area. But wow, you had Dubose, you had Shula, you had Price, you had Franchione, and you had Beads. That's a cast of characters right there, Coach.
Well, I tell you, man, there's the character of all of them was Gene Stallings. So I could sit here and tell you Gene Stallings stories all night. He was a different guy, and there's no doubt that he was in control of everything, and it was quite an experience to work for him. But I love Coach Stallings. He was great to me, and very demanding. And so, I probably modeled my whole career after things I learned from him more than any individual that I was ever around. And so because of the way he handled things, and he was very fair, but he was very tough.
Well, I know he has a special place in the heart of Alabama fans as well as you and Mrs. Ross. I have no doubt. Yeah. But it was time to leave Tuscaloosa. Then where'd you head off to in the college ranks, Coach?
Well, there was a guy that probably most people's heard of named Nick Saban that came in and fired all of us. So it was time to look for a new adventure. And so we ended up going to SMU in Dallas and actually stayed there 11 seasons and worked for 3 head coaches there. Phil Bennett was the coach that hired me. I'd known Phil when he coached at LSU, and he called me and said, "Hey, I may not be here long. Would love for you to come help me for a year and see what happens." And so we went to Dallas, and he got fired. He was right. He got fired 4 months after I was there. So I really didn't even get to work with him much. And then they brought in June Jones from Hawaii, and that was a whole new experience. Now you get into that rascal. He was fun. Ann loved him. We loved him to death. He was great. And but he was so laid back. He had that Hawaiian mentality, but it was eight really fun seasons. And then Chad Morris, who most people know, was kind of the one that jump-started Clemson with their offense, and they're still running his offense to this day. And he got the SMU job, and he was there for 3 seasons. And Chad and I really, really loved each other, and we had a great relationship. And so when he went to Arkansas, we went with him, and all that kind of was a misfortunate deal, but that's how we ended up at Arkansas, was because of Chad.
And when you ended up at SMU after, I think, the 07 or 08 time period, I can't remember, when had SMU rejuvenated or started back their football program? Had it
Well,
been a while, or were you in the infancy of that?
No, it actually, we went to the first bowl game in '09 that SMU had been to in 25 years, and that was the death penalty. So the death penalty was in the late '80s.
Right.
And,
Pony Express. I remember that was my time period. They were a couple of years. I was in high school, but gosh, I remember that time period very well.
Yeah, and you know what? It was a tough deal for SMU to ever kind of get going, but June did a great job. We went to 4 straight bowl games and kind of got the thing jump started a little bit. And then Chad came in, and now they're doing good. They've done really well the last couple of years. And so, this is a funny, quick story. I talked to a friend of mine from SMU the other day, and I said, you know what you need to do? You need to go rally up all those guys that got you guys on the death penalty. Because today, with the rule changes, y'all can go pay them players now, and it's not illegal. And I said, you need to go round all them guys up that's still living and let them buy them players now.
Well, Coach, I don't know if you remember Gaddy's Pizza in Nashville during the time that you were in there, but we used to get that was our food voucher on like once or twice a month on Sundays. It would rotate restaurants, and I ate so much Gaddy's Pizza, I should have had my own NIL deal with those guys.
That's right.
But Coach, you go from SMU, you end up at Arkansas. Was Arkansas your last stay before it was time to hang them up, or did you go somewhere else?
No, you know what? I went up there. We went for the 18-19 season with Chad, and you know, though, just college football is like your job as a lawyer. It's like every other job. Some things are just not meant to work, and we kind of knew. It's funny, we got there and just kind of knew it just wasn't a fit. And so we were there 2 seasons. They fired Chad with 2 games left in his second year, and I had planned to retire anyway after 45. That was my 45th season, so we had decided to retire in February of 2020, and so it ended up working out that we got fired and didn't have to even make that decision. So we've been retired. You know, now we weren't working the last football season. This will be the second season, and enjoying every minute of it.
Let's talk about that transition. When did you normally, during those years you were coaching, when did that itch start coming back? I know you didn't have much downtime in the summer. I know that, but your internal clock had to have kicked in at some point during the summer. And maybe Mrs. Ross is like, all right, here he goes. He's ready. He's thinking about, he doesn't care about the beach or fishing or hiking or whatever. He's got that game. He's thinking about that game. When did that normally kick in for you during the summers or the time period when you were coaching?
Well, you know what's funny about that? We got a place in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We spent 4.5 months out there, and that's where Ann's out there right now. And so we, you know, I used to every morning during vacation get up and spend 4 hours on the phone, calling and checking on things back at the office, making sure the kids' dorms were all set up for this and that. And so I guess last summer, when all that came along, it's like, man, I wanted to grab my phone and make sure everything was okay. And I'm like, wait, I got nobody to call. You know, I'm not working anymore. So the realization, I think, really hit in the summer, June of 2020, after I'd retired in February or after we'd been fired and everything. But it kind of kicked in then. And, you know, it's just natural because I handle so many things as a football ops guy. And so I would catch myself thinking, okay, I know what they're doing today. I know what they're doing tomorrow. I know what they're doing next week. I know, you know, I could picture all that. But I think the hardest thing, and this is ridiculous that we're in this type situation, is I'd grab my phone every morning to see who called. Well, wait a minute, nobody's calling. I don't work for anybody anymore. But, you know, you used to grab the phone, see if any of the coaches or the kids that called needed anything. And so that was kind of a transition. But be honest with you, I always said when it's time to retire, I'm going to retire. And I'm not going to be one of those hanger-ons. And I'm going to go enjoy my time with Ann. And she's my best friend. We'd rather be with each other than anybody. So we've spent some great time together. And I really, be honest with you, Bernard, I hadn't looked back and regretted a minute of retiring. And I've missed certain things, but nothing nothing much, be honest with you.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear. I got 2 last things and we're going to get you out of here. I want to talk about the athlete from the 70s and 80s in comparison to the current athletes. There's a lot of similarities. There has to be. It's competitive sports. But there's also probably a lot of changes that you've seen over the years. And I know you're not disparaging anybody, but I just wanted to hear maybe a little bit of your perspective of what's different now compared to then and what's the same that you saw over the years.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a good question because I'm really, really concerned about college football right now. And I, I'll be honest with you. I'm not for paying the players. I'm not for all that. I know I'm probably one of the ones few that's not. I know those kids all earn and all that, and I want them to get stuff. But I think what's going to happen is schools aren't going to have kids that love the university. You grew up in this state, kids grew up loving Alabama or Auburn. It was a dream come true to go play. And I'm afraid now you're going to have teams with guys that's looking at nothing but the money. And so I'm really concerned the direction college football's headed right now. I think it's going to be a totally different game. And the NCAA did a terrible job. My last year at Arkansas, every kid on scholarship, not counting their school paid for, above and beyond their scholarship, got $33,000 a year, cash money, no taxes. They didn't have time to spend it. Well, the NCAA, people don't realize that. And so I think right now it's going to become an NFL deal. And I know the kid here at Alabama, I'm in Tuscaloosa, that's why I'm saying here. And so anyway, he's already got $1 million in endorsements for this year. He's never started a game. I think we're taking the real reason guys in the 70s and 80s and 90s and up until the last few years, they chose universities because they wanted to go play there. They loved that university. And I'm afraid now we're going to see kids choosing universities for the wrong reason. And I tell you where it's going to really hurt. It's going to go down into the high schools. I don't know if you saw it. The number one quarterback in America, South Lake Carroll, has decided not to play. He's going to forego his senior year so he can start accepting endorsements, which is totally ridiculous.
Yeah, because Texas hasn't passed any laws like other states have allowing the kids to do that in college. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's a concern.
It's too much too soon.
Yes.
And maybe that's the evolution of society, but the NCAA has lost, if they had any oversight or any control, it is gone. It is completely gone.
You might as well take the NCAA and throw them away.
Well, I was going to say, unless or until the government steps in to regulate everything, I think it's just wild, wild west. I think you're absolutely right, Coach. I think that high-profile positions, whether you're the quarterback at Alabama, a tailback at USC, a linebacker at Ohio State, those positions are high-profile positions. And whoever's going to be the number one starter for those positions, I think is going to naturally step into situations where they can receive monies just based on who they've become. But you see schools now, Coach, and we'll get off this just a second. Come to our school, we'll help you build your brand. Well, a lot of kids now coming out of junior high and high school, they've got millions of social media followers. They have their own brand.
That's right.
And that's that. And I hate to sound like the old generation, like we're talking about it, but maybe this is at some point, somebody's got to get their hands around all of this to figure out how to maintain the sport, because we love the college game. We love the high school game. I just don't want it to be so, I guess, changed, if you will.
Well, the people that could stop it are the college football coaches. And this kid I'm talking about at South Lake Carroll, I'm on the bandwagon of him. I don't appreciate that from because you guys played the game, you loved it, you played it because you loved it. He's not going to play now with his high school teammates he grew up with.
Yeah.
Now, if the head coach at Ohio State, where he's committed, picks the phone up and calls him and says, hey, you're going to play at South Lake Carroll, or we're not going to sign you, then all of a sudden you will see that stop in a hurry. If everybody had enough guts as head coaches to call those kids and say, you're not going to play at my university, and when you walk out on your own teammates there at South Lake Carroll. And so people may not feel that way. And I don't want the kids not to get money. That's not my point. They were getting $33,000 a year apiece at Arkansas. They were getting $27,000 at SMU. So and that was all that cost of attendance. So I am really concerned the direction college football's headed. And I'm old school again, like you. And I love it when kids say, I want people that played at Vanderbilt to say, I played at Vanderbilt because I love Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And that's, I think we're going to lose that.
Here's the other thing that I fear. I don't want to see a college uniform with a Milo's T emblem on the Auburn jersey just because Bo Nix, their quarterback, has a Milo's T deal. I don't want to see the schools go the way of like the European Basketball League professional jerseys and those things. But guys, we're just talking about stuff. It doesn't mean anything. We're not going to change anything. But I'm just having a great talk with one of my former coaches, Coach Randy Ross. Coach, we're at the end of our awesome discussion. I really appreciate your time, and I really have appreciated catching up with you this hour.
Well, absolutely. It's been my pleasure. And again, thank you, man. And I'm going to take you up on you when you come down here to Tuscaloosa. And, that's where I'm retiring. Ann and I are building a house here right now. And when you come down here to see your in-laws, and I'm going to expect you to come over and see me. And I appreciate you having me on the show. And I appreciate you doing this because I think this is a great idea you guys have. And it keeps all the Vandy guys connected. And I think that's great.
Well, thank you, Coach. I promise you're going to see me this fall, just plenty. Guys, as we do Thursdays, whether it's 5 p.m., 7 p.m., we have conversations with Commodores and Coach Randy Ross. It was so great to catch up with tonight. Guys, continue to be safe. Do what's best for you and your family. Unfortunately, the pandemic is not going away anytime soon, but continue to be safe. And remember, anchor down. See y'all next week.